That's cool though. Yeah, 2010 was right when I was just getting into marathon swimming. So anything like 2010 prior, it's really fun to learn the history of because I don't know any of it.
Yeah, well, 2010 was a remarkable year. It was a remarkable year because you had all these different groups of very experienced marathon swimmers and channel swimmers who were getting together in initially fun groups. And you had the Ventura Deep Six, and they were swimming down the coast of California. And then you had a group with Penny Palfrey and Philip Rush swimming across Lake Taupo in New Zealand. And you had Vito Bayala of the Night Train Swimmers and his group of people from California and Mexico City. You had some other groups from South Africa, and they were really pushing themselves. And then you probably know the Irish group, and they did a 10-day swim, a 10-day relay. And that was what they did is they had a 1 kilometer course, and they had like 100 people, maybe more than 100 people participate in this relay, and they went on for a little over 10 days straight, day and night.
Oh, wow.
So around 2010, when you were getting into the sport, like you had this from 2010 to about 2013, this massive rush of people, including a group of Air Force officers from India who were doing these massively long relays. And and around 2010, we had political problems between Mexico and the United States. And there was some political grief, and obviously it wasn't anything like today, but there was a lot of political accusations and offerings, and Vito knew Nora Toledano and her friends. And so they just said, hey, let's have a Mexican-American unity swim in Lake Powell. And so, we swam, or they swam, and I served as their observer in the lake where you then many years later did a really massive swim. So that was the background.
It's a good lake.
Yeah. And how long was your swim in Lake Powell?
It was 80 miles officially. We probably swam more than that, just cutting the corners.
Yeah.
But officially, that was what we came up with, was right at 80 miles.
Yeah.
And 56 hours.
You went from north to south or south to north?
We went north to south.
Yeah.
Is that right? We started at Bullfrog in Utah and swam down to Wahweap in Arizona.
Yeah.
So,
and was that course preset?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
The water level rises and falls pretty rapidly in Lake Powell. So when we were creating the route, we were kind of trying to predict where the water level would be, because you're going to change depending on where the water level is at. And so we predicted it at a certain level, and it was maybe 10 feet lower. So that kind of shortened the course a little bit. When it was lower, you're able to cut the corners a little bit more sharply, if that makes sense. So it was really interesting.
Yeah.
I had only, my husband and I went and scouted it out in May, and the water was like way high. And then when we went in early October, it was like 30 feet lower. So it was really weird to be like swimming by stuff. And it's like, oh man, I remember that. But like 3 months ago, I was like at that point, and now it's like 30 feet on top of me. So like really interesting experience at that lake.
Did you see the striations of the lines on the cliffs?
Yes. It's pretty cool.
I thought those were the most beautiful things that I'd seen in a coastline.
Yes. No, it's like, especially as a swimmer, right? And there's not a whole lot to look at. You spend a lot of time looking at those walls, and it's, even after 2 days, it's still beautiful. It's just mesmerizing. It's one of Lake Powell is probably one of my most favorite places that I've ever been swimming.
Yeah.
I always say I need to go back just to experience it without the pain.
When you swim, obviously 50 hours or more, 40 hours or more,
Mhm.
what are the major differences between your lake swims, Lake Champlain, Lake Powell, and then the English Channel four-way? Like what fundamentally, I think I can guess, but I'd love to hear from your perspective, 50 hours in the channel versus 50 hours in a lake.
Yeah, I'd rather do it in the channel. I'll tell you that right now.
Really?
Yeah, hands down. My 67 hours in Lake Champlain was probably like the most painful thing I've ever done in my life. And my husband, like afterwards, my husband was like, we're not doing that again. And then comparing that to my recovery from the channel, it was like night and day. And so I think I've maybe convinced him that we could try something longer in the ocean.
Wow. What do you think that
Saltwater
is
just,
to you?
it's the salt water. It provides so much more buoyancy.
Okay.
So you're not driving so much with your arms and your shoulders. You know, my recovery both from, I mean, I usually recover fairly quickly, but the recovery from like Lake Powell to the English Channel, which was like similar time in the water, was just night and day. You know, the salt water creates problems with like your tongue and like chafing and things like that. But as far as like strain on your shoulders and your lower back and your hip flexors and all of that stuff, like salt water is night and day easier. I would pick it every time.
Really?
If I was
Wow.
going to do a long swim.
Yeah.
Hands down.
And when you say recovery from a swim, are we talking one day or a week, or how long are we talking about for recovery in a lake swim?
Yeah, well, it depends on what you fully mean by recovery. If you mean like raising your arms up again, you know, that's a couple of days. If we're talking about like being able to like get back in the water and like actually train, you know, you're looking at a month or something like that in order just to like your shoulders to be feeling normal again and not feeling exhausted. It wipes you out, like staying up like that. Like it just, the like sleep deprivation and the physical exhaustion and the mental exhaustion takes some time to come back from, no matter what setting it is.
Yeah. And from your husband's perspective, who is in the boat, you know, totally focused on you, how long does it take him to like get back to full functionality?
A while longer than me, I think.
Really?
I think emotional stress is harder for him than it is for me, because I'm just doing it, right? I'm not thinking about anything other than swimming, but he's got a bazillion other things that he's focused on, like especially like in Lake Champlain and Lake Powell, where we were self-supporting. You know, he's worried about the boats breaking down or, you know, driving the boat. So he's got so much on his mind, and it, you know, the lead up to it stresses him out. And then I think he's like on high alert during the whole swim. I mean, he usually doesn't sleep a whole lot. I remember Lake Champlain yelling at him at one point, like, you need to go sleep. And he told me to shut up and swim, you know, so.
I think that can only happen with someone who's maybe living with the other.
Right.
Okay. What hour were you yelling at him to go to sleep about?
That happened like right at 24 hours. So like we had, because I created a schedule, right? Like there's the A team and the B team, and they're going to be flopping. And now they've been 24 hours and Ryan's been with the A team and the B team. And it's like, dude, we still have a long ways to go. You need to go to sleep. But he's not telling me that he's worried about, you know, X, Y, and Z happening. And, you know, things were stressful and chaotic. So, you know, all he can communicate to me in a quick feed is shut up, woman, you know, keep swimming.
Oh
so,
my God. I have another question. So before you're married, or in the lead up to your marriage, was marathon swimming part of your spousal relationship?
Well, see, you know, I did Catalina in 2010, in July of 2010, and Ryan and I started dating in May of 2010. So he has never known me without the swimming thing. So been kind of a part of it. He did not come with me on Catalina, but he did come with me when I swam around Manhattan the following year. And he was supposed to be like my alternate, but my two main people had to pull out. And so I've got Ryan, who's not a swimmer, like has never done this before. And all of a sudden I'm throwing him on a boat while I swim around Manhattan. And I packed him up like all these supplies and like a suitcase full of food. And, you know, he meets me at the end and he's like so excited. And he's like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. And I looked at like the food stash, and that man, he drank Red Bull and smoked cigarettes the whole way around. And that was it. Because he was too stressed to even like think about eating. So like I'm swimming and he's like stressed and living off of Red Bull and cigarettes. And that's kind of how it still is to this day. He'll eat like 2 sandwiches on a multi-day swim and just power through.
I think this is like the epitome of true love.
Mm-hmm.
This has to be.
Right? Like, I don't know. We were talking about it. Our 7-year wedding anniversary was yesterday. So we were
congratulations
discussing our, you know, decade of adventures. And yeah, I'm pretty lucky that he is into it and supports it. And I don't know, not a lot of people would support it the way that he does. So yeah, I'm pretty lucky.
Yeah, because I mean, it's one thing to be there on the day, or in your case, days of your swim, but it's a 365-day commitment.
Yeah. Yeah. It's stressful on everything when I'm like really in training mode.
Yeah.
I work a full-time job. He works a full-time job. So I'm always cramming swimming around working. And then when it comes to the weekends, you know, I'm out at the lake doing 12-hour training swims on Saturdays and Sundays. So like, are we even married? Do we see each other? But he's pretty nice about it. You know, he goes with it. And, you know, he's a big fisherman. So sometimes he comes along and like fishes on the shore while I'm swimming, or, you know, he's got his own friends. So it's kind of, you know, he's got his own hobby. So he doesn't necessarily need me too much.
Now, do you like come back after your, I guess I should have assumed that you were doing 12-hour practices. I mean, 12-hour practices is not normal, but
right.
like, how do you even recover from a 12-hour practice and go to work on Monday?
You just do it. You know, the first season that I was doing a lot of those like 8, 10, 12-hour swims on the weekends, it was hard. But at this point, like, I don't even know it. Like, I probably should admit this, but I've got a lake, not the normal one that we train in, but another one with no boats or anything. But I just go out, you know, 12 hours by myself. You know, they know where I'm at, but there's no cell service or anything like that. There's other people, you know, there's people kayaking or paddleboarding or swimming or fishing or whatever. But as far as like taking people with me, I frequently go alone and just kind of swim the perimeter of the lake. It's about 2 miles each loop. So, you know, I just swim loops for 12 hours and, you know, get out and drive myself home. And I don't even like think about it anymore. You know, it's like, oh, it's just 12, not a big deal.
Wow. I mean, this is like mind blowing at every level. What's the longest training swim you've done?
Probably 12. I think I usually max out at 12.
Okay.
I've done kind of, people here think I'm insane, but the craziest thing I've done is I did 12 on a Saturday and 12 on a Sunday back to back. And that was kind of crazy. I've done, and another time I did a 10 or a 12 and then a 10 the next day. So I've done a lot of those like back to back long swims. And they're just so boring, right? That's the hardest part, is that I'm just swimming like 2-mile loops in a lake for hours, you know, I'm not even really counting distance so much as just like putting in the time. And so you get out and you're like, yeah, I just spent like 12 hours swimming in circles. And then I start thinking of like all the other like things that I could have swum, you know, like, ooh, I could have done a Catalina channel. I could have done the Cook Strait. I could have done this, but no, I just swam 2-mile loops today.
Oh my gosh. No, believe me, it's not only the people in Colorado who think you're crazy. I mean, it's crazy. And I say this with all due respect, in a very admirable way. Because I mean, yes, you could spend 12 hours watching Netflix or something. You could do that or
Right.
read a book, but you're doing something that nobody in the world is doing, which is, a feat
There might
upon
be some
itself.
people out there working towards it.
I don't know, 12 hours on Saturday, 12 hours on Sunday, and then going to work for 12 hours on Monday.
Yeah.
Uh, Maybe Caroline
I guess,
Block, maybe.
yeah, there we go. Caroline Block, maybe Cameron Bellamy. Well, I guess he doesn't necessarily work. I don't know what he does, but
And then how do you
no.
handle your feeds when you're on a 12-hour solo training swim?
Yeah, I just keep them on shore.
Okay.
Line up my bottles on the edge and just kind of wait out. And I usually am looking at the clock. My maximum stop is 2 minutes. So I'm always like, all right, Sarah, you got to get moving again. So kind of like count myself down so that I'm not just like standing there dawdling too long. Because sometimes it's tempting, right? You're like out, it's warm. You don't really want to get back in. So 2 minutes is the cutoff. So anyone that's ever like there with me, because sometimes people will come and like swim for a couple of hours and then leave. They know that 2 minutes is the time limit.
Wow, that discipline is just off the charts. Off the chart. And do you go early in the morning to try to get some night swimming in, or it just all pure daylight swimming?
Yeah, it's usually just daylight swimming, right? Like a 7 to a 7 or an 8 to an 8 or something like that. I'm not really an early morning person, so getting me out of bed at like 2 or 3 in the morning is not recommended.
Yeah. And how do you handle or prepare yourself for sleep deprivation?
I had all these plans leading up to Lake Powell as to how I was going to do that. And just with work, it was like impossible to practice it. So I don't, and I just think I'm maybe really lucky that naturally I can kind of handle that sort of a thing without too many issues. I mean, I've probably pulled more like all-nighters in my life than the average person to start with, just like staying up, like reading a book all night long. So I think somewhere there's got to be something genetic that lets me do that, because I have practiced it, and I don't really drink a lot of caffeine. So if we're in the middle of night number 2 and you give me like a caffeine tab, like I'm awake for hours from that. So it doesn't take a whole lot to get me going again.
Okay. Is there a tea or a coffee that you want black coffee, or you want some kind of green tea, or is there any kind of favorite that you have?
So on a swim, I usually just use a Noon electrolyte tab, and they have, some of them are like just straight and some of them have caffeine. So if I need caffeine, they just pop me an electrolyte tab that has caffeine in it. I think it's the equivalent of like 1 cup of coffee. So I spread that over like an hour and a half. In Lake Champlain, towards the end, I was struggling a little bit. Carbo Pro makes a caffeine tab that's mostly green tea. So we supplemented with a couple of those into night 3 in Lake Champlain because I was getting a little loopy. Yeah, that was an interesting finish for sure.
Loopy. So I think I know what you mean, but I'm not sure. Like loopy meaning you're falling, you're nodding off to sleep, or cognitively you're not all there.
So let's see, you're in Lake Champlain, kind of towards the end of day 3. So like it was my 3rd sunset. I was starting to feel like a little bit sleepy, and I'd never felt sleepy before. So that was when they started giving me like a caffeine pill, right? So it was like, I feel like I'm not hallucinating, but things are a little fuzzy around the edges, and I'd like to take a nap. So they gave me like this caffeine, and that like really perked me back up, right? And so then like the rest of the evening, it's nighttime again, the stars are out. It's day 2 had been like really windy. The second full night was like kicked our butts. It was so windy, and then all of the next day it was just like wind in my face, at my side. It was just crazy conditions for about 24 hours. So on that, like last night, we're kind of headed towards the finish. We know that we're going to make it, but like I'm swimming like 1 mile an hour and it's dead flat. And I'm like looking up at my boat and I'm like, guys, the lake is giving me a gift. She threw everything she had at me. She tested me and now she's letting me pass. You know, so like things like that where you're like super reflective and not really like, I knew where we were going. My boat crew was having a hard time finding the landing point, and I was like, no, it's up here. You know, I recognize these boat docks, you know, so I'm still like very with it, telling them where we're going. You know, my mom's like, this is your last feed. And I'm like, no, we've got another 45 minutes or, you know, so I'm very with it in that way. But then I'm also like, this is a beautiful lake. I don't care if the lampreys get me, you know, like
Oh,
of it.
when you were getting sleepy, were you yawning as you're swimming, or what? Or your eyelids were getting heavy? What was
Yeah,
the
my eyes were just getting really heavy.
Okay.
Yeah, just really heavy and starting to think like, I could just go to sleep right now with my face down in the water. Wait, that's a bad idea. So stuff like that where you're like, a nap sounds really good. Hang on, that is stupid. I'm swimming right now. So, you know, you have to recognize that in yourself, right? My crew didn't know that that was happening. You know, so I had to stop and say, hey guys, I'm sleepy. Can you get me my caffeine?
Okay.
And watch, you know, basically is what I said, like, hey, keep an extra eye on me for a little while, please.
Yeah.
So, you know, that you're very aware of what's going on, even when I'm kind of feeling like I'm losing it mentally.
Yeah. Now they don't know what's going on because you're like a metronome. You're just powering
Right.
away. So outside looking in, everything's okay. But you got this mental game that's going on between your sleepy angel and the I want to go to bed angel. Oh,
yeah.
wow. Now, what about food? You like, I mean, you said Ryan eats 2 sandwiches, you know, in a 55-hour swim. What do you actually take something other than these carbo drinks with caffeine?
Not a ton, a little bit. If it's a shorter swim, you know, like 20 miles or whatever, it's all liquid. But I have found when you start getting into like these multi-day events, I really do need something solid in my stomach. So it kind of, I don't know, I've experimented with a few things over the years. You know, like baby food is really kind of delicious going down. You know, they make baby food pouches so you can just squeeze them. In Lake Powell, I didn't really have a lot of solid foods and I was like getting really cold and kind of grumpy. And they asked me like, what do you want? And I knew we had some like instant risotto on the boat. So they made me some risotto. I just like squeezed it out of a Ziploc bag. And so, you know, like anything with rice in it has been really good since then. People think I'm silly because I really like to eat carrots. They're just nice and crunchy and fresh. So you can kind of crunch on a couple of carrots. I don't think that they provide any nutritional value whatsoever as far as the swim goes, but they're just kind of nice. Cookies, learned the hard way. I can't tolerate peanut butter. I love peanut butter a lot in normal life, but on the swim, it is no bueno. So,
Oh, wow.
you know, whatever feels like. Eating those M&Ms, I think peanut M&Ms on my English Channel swim. So
with nuts or with peanuts?
Good in the moment. What was that?
With peanuts or without?
Yeah, peanut M&Ms. Yeah, they were good and crunchy. They were telling myself they were like the most well-rounded snack that I could have because there's protein and sugar.
Yeah. I
really
think
good.
people who are not in the swimming world, and many people who are, certainly pool swimmers would be, they don't understand that texture that you feel, that crunchiness really gives you a lot of satisfaction. It's like, I'm sort of still real. I'm still sort of a land-based mammal.
Right. Yeah, when you're like consuming liquids for hours on hours and then all of a sudden you're like get to crunch on something, and it's like very magical.
Yeah. And getting back to Lake Powell, can you describe the lake for people? Like, how did it come about and why that lake? And
yeah, I mean, I thought I was supposed to be interviewing you, and now here I am. Just
no, it's okay. You're much more interesting to learn about.
I don't think so. You've got some good stories too, some good history. But basically we picked that lake because there's not a lot of lakes that offer 80 miles
Yeah.
straight without having to go around.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of limited in your options. You can look at the Great Lakes, there's plenty of routes you can do in like Lake Michigan or, some of those northern lakes, but those lakes are so vast that the weather conditions can be quite variable. And so, you're out in the middle of, 40 miles into a swim in Lake Michigan and a squall comes out of nowhere. And then what do you do?
Yeah.
So, Lake Powell, pretty consistent weather patterns that you can, predict, not super variable, pretty consistent water temperature. So we knew if we went in October, we had a good chance of, good solid water temperatures and air temperatures. So, there's just a lot of predictability to Lake Powell that really liked compared to like some other, lakes that are just as long, but maybe wider.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
And remember when I was with the Mexican American Unity Swim, and they had 3 Americans and 3 Mexican swimmers. I was the only observer. I was the only official. And this is in 2010. So I don't think, maybe I don't remember the year that the Marathon Swimmers Federation was there, but we just sort of, to be honest, we were just winging it. Like, I'd have my laptop or I'd have my clipboard and I, jot things down, and those forms that we used back then, we had been using since the 1990s, and it was just sort of columns of, time and stroke count and, feeding. And again, because we hadn't a specific goal in mind, at least not in the beginning. Yeah, I can handle it. I can stay up, over 24 hours. Well, on the second night, as the only observer, I'm getting,
you have to sleep.
I'm getting really tired, really sleepy. And so, my notes went from very, very condensed with a lot of information to they stopped at 12:01. I didn't, and then it was, and it got a little cool the second night. Not terribly cold, but cool. So I had a jacket on, had my shoes on, I had long pants on. I think I had my Speedos on at the time, because I think I kept my Speedos as the official observer, just for safety's sake. But I was pretty clothed. And then the swimmers on the relay, the swimmer who was swimming would stop, and then the next swimmer would swim up behind them and then carry on. So the swimmer has to get out of the water. And so as an observer, I would go in the back of the boat and I would tell Vito, the captain, stop, kill the engine, let the swimmer get on the boat safely. And then I'd say, okay, Vito, you can go. Well, he's also driving for a long time. And we were in a big, very, very nice houseboat. And I remember I forgot who, I think it was Nora, but it could have been Patty. One of the women were getting out, and they're on their second day too. And so I'm helping them out. And then I yelled to Vito, hey, Vito, okay, go, start the engine. Well, I'm losing my balance and I just fall in the water.
Oh no.
Fully clothed. And remember, the other swimmer is now pretty far ahead.
Right.
Pitch black, as you can appreciate. I mean,
very
in Lake
dark.
Powell, there are no street lights. It's pitch black.
Nothing. Yeah, it's so dark, very dark.
And so I hit the water. I'm fully clothed, and I'm thinking like you. I just want to go to bed. I just want to sleep. And I sort of closed my eyes, and then I realized, oh no, everybody's on the boat, and the boat is going fast to catch up to the swimmer. And I think that swimmer was Matthew Davey, who is a very fast swimmer. I think he swam at Stanford. So he's a fast 1,500 meter
Yeah, he's
swimmer.
moving.
And I'm fully clothed, shoes, jacket, jeans. And I'm like, wait a second. So I'm swimming as hard as I can.
In all your
I'm
clothes.
never going to catch them. So
Never.
I'm starting to yell. I stopped and I ate Vito, and I'm yelling, Vito, Vito. Well, we're on our second night and everybody's tired. And I'm thinking,
Right.
at what point are they going to realize that their observer is nowhere on the
It's
boat?
gone.
So I'm
Yeah.
thinking, okay, we have to go into survival mode here. Like, if they don't turn around, I've got to find somewhere to go. And undoubtedly
Right.
they will turn back. I
Right.
wasn't fearful of my life. I'm just thinking, how many more hours am I here? And I said, do I
Right.
take off my jacket or do I keep it on? If I take off
Right.
my jacket, well, I don't have a jacket for the rest of them. Though that's not good. So I had a
Right.
down jacket. So I took it off and I rolled it up into a ball. I stuck it into my Levi's. I took off my shoes and I put my hand in my shoes, and we're using them as a paddle.
Nice.
And I said, I don't need my socks. So I threw off my socks, and then my shirt, I just sort of rolled it up. So the long sleeve shirt wasn't flapping. And I'm swimming I swim for 10 strokes and then I'll yell. I'll swim for 10 strokes and I'll yell. And I don't remember exactly how long, but finally someone realized, oh, Steve's like not on the boat. Where is he? and they stopped. And then every 10 strokes I'm yelling, and you've been up to Lake Powell, and you know how tranquil and quiet it is. So if you hear someone yelling, you can hear them. And I saw them stop, and then I heard their voice back, and I'm swimming back, and I get on, and everybody's like, where'd you go? Like, why did you do that, Steve? I'm like, believe me, this is not my intended activity here. I did not want to be all wet. So I don't know, that was on the second night. And then we finished in the daytime in the morning. But I just thought that lake was just so gorgeous and so beautiful. And you know, I encourage everyone who is a swimmer, a marathon swimmer, or even if you're not doing channels, and that's a great place to just see and visit at least once in your life.
Right. Yeah, I agree. You know, it's so easy to rent a houseboat there and just like jump off the back of the houseboat and swim as long as you want to, and then get back on the houseboat and have lunch. So I really, you know, I've been there twice now, and I agree with you. Everyone needs to go back and swim it. Experience it, because it's a pretty special place.
Did you see any fish there? The only time I swam was at night when I was swimming with clothes. I didn't see any fish, but I know people do fish there.
Yeah, they have some really big fish. I think if you go deep enough, I see some. There was a couple of places where it kind of narrowed down on us and got a little bit shallow. And when it was more shallow, you could, you know, see some bass and stuff floating around. When we went on our reconnaissance mission, my husband fished quite a bit and caught some fish just offshore the boat. So there's definitely fish there, and I think there's some monsters in there if you know where to look for them.
Oh, this is great. I really enjoy talking with someone who has a common experience. Now, my experience was as an observer. Yours was as a swimmer. Mine was in a relay. Yours was as a solo attempt or solo achievement. But it's interesting to see the two different perspectives on, you know, same lake, same venue, and completely different experiences.
Right. Well, you probably shared something if you were awake for almost as long as I was. Trying to take notes for the swimmers. So that's a pretty common experience. That's a hard thing to do, to stay awake for, you know, a couple of days like that, and to try and take notes, you know.
So when Vito called me, I said, okay. And like you know, I've got a full-time job, and I waited, and I said, Vito, if you're starting on, let's say at 2 p.m., I don't remember the exact time, but it was in the afternoon. So I left LA by myself to time it. So when I got there, the boat took off. So I had, it had to have been at least 10 hours, probably more, that I was just driving straight. And then I jumped on the boat, then we did our 55 hours. And then, you know, I knew I needed to sleep because there's no way I had to drive back to LA. And
Right.
so that appreciation for staying up long
Right.
periods of time, I have never swum that long, but I've stayed up that long, and it's
Yeah.
extraordinarily tough.
It's
And
tough.
you can tell
For
by my
sure.
notes, because at the end I just say they finished.
Right. Perfect.
Yeah. So anyway, well, thank you very much for your time, and
I don't think we covered Ned's questions
oh,
very
it's okay.
well.
It's okay. He'll give us a B+ on this interview. But
Okay.
and that's the whole thing. I mean, yes, it was in a slightly unstructured form, but we learned about you and Ryan. I was able to retell my experience in Lake Powell, because that's the only
Yeah.
time I did swim in the lake. And it's
You need to go back
yes,
with
it's a
your Speedo
gorgeous
on.
yeah. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. I'm
Thank you.
so happy you got this huge smile on your face after all these adventures.
Yeah, I definitely love chatting with swimming, especially with people who have, done some of those similar things and had some shared experiences, like you said. So it's always a good morning when you can chat about swimming with someone.
Well, thank you.